Hi there, and welcome to another success story. Today we're talking to Olivia, and I'm going to start with my first question, which I ask every guest. Hi, Olivia. Why did you become carnivore?
Hi, Stephen. Thanks for having me. Well, I started my carnivore journey just over a year ago. I had my first carniversary last week, which was really, really great to celebrate. The reason I decided to try the diet was because I've been on a bit of a health quest for the last few years. I've always thought of myself as healthy, but I had a period of time outside of work, and I had about 20 years doing kind of big corporate work and being very kind of burned out. And I had some time out from that and thought, I really want to look into the right way that humans should be eating, or I should be eating, mainly because I had about a decade of experiencing my parents before they passed away. Encountered some really bad metabolic illnesses. My dad had Alzheimer's, my mum had type 2 diabetes, and I always thought, oh well, I'm destined for those as well. And it bothered me that I wasn't clear on how I could reduce that risk. And I thought, by investigating a bit more, maybe there's some things I could do to reduce the risk of getting those diseases, which are not pleasant for anyone and the family to experience. And I was very shocked to find out, by doing a little bit of research, that not only is it possible to reduce the risk, but also to pretty much eliminate it. And that was kind of shocking to me, having spent a decade caring for my parents and thinking how tragic it was that they had to spend such a large part of their life suffering. So for me, I was always on a health quest to try and reduce that risk, and to then have the realization that there is a way to prevent it completely really threw me with what is going on in the world, because I did consider myself a pretty well-rounded, educated person. I'm up to speed on most matters in the world. But for something as fundamental as, how we fuel ourselves, to be so much confusion, misinformation, and really the wrong information out there that people are following for the most part, was just felt fundamentally unjust and wrong to me. And coming from a background of strategy marketing, which included a lot of public education campaigning, that was a kind of a moment for me to think about, well, maybe I should be using my skills in this space and spreading this message, because that's something I know how to do, and I can play a part in something I feel really, really passionate about. So that kind of set me on this trajectory. And then, parallel to that, my own personal journey and experiencing, reducing my kind of carbs and doing the ketogenic diet for about a year and a half. I was continuing to research, continuing to hear about different kind of approaches, and hearing quite a few people talk about carnivore. I kept thinking that's not for me. I love vegetables. I'm pretty happy. I've achieved a lot already in a year and a half. And then someone said, well, what are you doing this for? You're trying to find out what the right diet is. And so how can you do that without trying? So I thought, oh, okay, well, maybe I should just try it for 3 months and just say I've done it, and then I can finish this project. So I decided to give it a go, and found, oh, okay, there is more to it than meets the eye, and there is an actual significant, noticeable uplift, even for someone who didn't have any kind of condition that I was trying to solve. There is quite a change in how you feel and how you feel physically and mentally.
That's pretty good. I was just taking some notes there, because you hit a nerve with me straight away when you talked about your mum and dad, because I had a similar experience where I've lost my mum was very much cut the fat off the meat. Don't have meat if you can help it. Cereal, vegetarian, pretty much. Ran in the morning, and she had colon cancer and died when I was very young. And my dad, same thing, died of a different sort of cancer, allegedly eating healthy, and he died quite young as well. And I felt, well, that's it, my number's up. I mean, I rarely in an interview talk about me. I try to focus on you, but I just want you to know that you're in a very similar situation to me. And I look back now and think, wow, if I knew then what I know now, things would have been very different. But there you go. So I loved what you just said there. You learned initially, well, you can't reduce the risk, and then you learned that actually it was possible. And did that make you feel a bit cross when you realized that maybe you were being misled initially?
Yeah, I think so. I went through a period of being quite annoyed about it, because it's not like a small piece of information that makes no difference. It is fundamental to the population of our species for decades now. And, until you go back and really look at the history and read the books of nutrition and, the history of nutrition in various different books, like, Nina Teicholz's book and others, you don't appreciate that we have been on a journey and that we have been somewhere else and that things didn't work the way they do now. And no one really had, we learn history on all sorts of topics and, political history and, our society and wars and all of that kind of stuff. But we never really understand nutritional history. And it seems a bit strange considering how fundamental it is. And actually, when you look at it, you realize, oh, we didn't, if you zoom out and look at the kind of the timeline of our species, we never used to eat like this. It's crazy that we are. And no one seems to know that it's crazy. And so I was annoyed that I had the direct experience of watching my parents. My dad was a pilot his whole life. He was a very capable man, and then suddenly to get to the point where he, I remember having a very poignant moment with him in the kitchen when he was first diagnosed with Alzheimer's, and him desperately asking me, are they going to find a cure? When will they find a cure? Will it be soon? And I didn't know, and I was sad about the whole thing. And it's never left me that I could watch him being, at that stage of being kind of conscious of the fact that he was losing his memory, and trying his best to think about how he could, stay with us, but then knowing that it was all slipping away. And that's a horrendous thing for anyone to have to experience. And that has, stayed with me forever. And one of the reasons I ended up kind of Googling the sentence of how do I prevent myself getting Alzheimer's, but that is too much to ask, of our society to just accept. And it's it is absolutely frustrating to me that so many generations, particularly the last two, have really suffered the consequences and been the victims that didn't know about the right way to eat. And I'm really determined. In fact, a lot of what I'm doing is about how we change it for the next generation and how we allow kids to eat the right way. So I did have that moment, and is what propelled me into this space, really.
Yeah, I think the fact your dad had Alzheimer's and your mother, you said, was diabetic. The diabetic thing really does buzz me, because I'm a specialist practitioner in obesity and diabetes and a qualified phlebotomist. So you can see the difference and you can read the difference in the diet. The person that you're dealing with, they can see the difference. And I constantly get, why wasn't I told this 20 years ago? And you see the regression of type 2 diabetes. And it's remarkable that there's still pushback when there's just hundreds of thousands of people that are reversing it. Simple as that. You noticed an uplift. You said when you went carnivore, and you glossed over, but I'd love to know a little bit more about what you felt the difference was going from keto. And again, similar to my story, I went keto, then I went carnivore. So what happened to you? What was the differences?
Well, there were lots, some big things and some smaller things, but quite a collection of them, and all noticeable. So I guess the first one was my athletic performance. So I tend to run and cycle quite a lot. I cycle mostly indoors on a watt bike these days, but I noticed that my running time fell by a third, running the same route. And I was cycling quite a lot at the time, and I climb a particular mountain every day, and I had a time that I would normally do it in, and every so often I'd really push it and I'd shave off 1 or 2 minutes from that time. And then I remember about 2 weeks into doing carnivore, I looked at the clock and couldn't work out. I thought something had gone wrong with the bike, because I'd basically halved the time of climbing this mountain that I had been doing for the last year and a half, and never really seeing any much of a kind of a difference in time. So that really threw me. Like, either my bike is broken or I'm doing really well here. And it was the latter, which is just a great experience to have had. And I've pretty much kept that time up ever since. So it was just obviously a new level of athletic capability. I don't know what it is. I also noticed that when I work out, I used to always stretch very religiously. And if I didn't, I'd feel it the next day, because I kind of work out hard. I do resistance training as well. And then I remember not stretching for a couple of days, just because I forgot, and never felt anything as a result from a soreness point of view. And that was strange. And so now I don't stretch as much, and I don't know if that's good or not, but I don't feel any side effects from not stretching. So Went skiing, managed to ski in a completely different level to what I had done in previous years. So lots on the kind of athletic side of things. And then physiologically, my body kind of just felt like it was different. My eyes got whiter, my teeth got whiter. On my eyes, I remember, well, for many years I wore contact lenses, and I used to have kind of like a redness because I'd worn them and overworn them, and the optician said, oh, you can't do anything about that because the blood vessels have come up to the surface and they'll just be red like that. And I thought, okay, that's gone. And they're kind of whiter again. What else? My nails are really hard. The skin has totally changed. Lots of people have commented on my skin being a lot clearer. My feet, I've noticed that I always watch my mum scrub her feet with a pumice stone in the shower to kind of get the kind of harder skin off, and I've had to stop having to ever do that. I've never noticed any kind of hardness of the kind of heel skin. Another weird one was I used to have this annoying toenail fungus for, it must have been 15 years. And I think it comes from running a lot and having your toes in a kind of enclosed space. And whatever I did, I spent hundreds of pounds on buying these fungal solutions to get rid of this toenail fungus, and tried, and then it would come back with a regrowth and all that kind of thing. Never managed to do anything about it. Within about 2 months, that was gone totally. So strange things like that, which I never would have thought a diet could have had any impact on. But probably the biggest thing was, I remember waking up one day and saying, or thinking, or feeling like I just had a completely different level of positivity. Basically the mental health aspect of this was probably the biggest one for me, because it was something like a Wednesday, and I felt like I was the happiest day that I'd ever experienced. And I didn't have any significant mental health issues. I mean, I had some bad times when my parents passed away, but it was nothing that I was looking for a cure to. It just was life, really. So it was almost like a cloud had lifted that I didn't even know was there, and I just felt like almost euphoric. So that was totally strange as well, and again, that has remained. So all these benefits have remained, and you almost get to the point where now I think, gosh, am I so used to them that I don't appreciate them anymore? I almost want to. Sometimes I get a bit jealous when people say they've fallen off the bandwagon, and then they remembered how great it is to eat the way we eat, and I almost have forgotten it because I'm so used to it. So I'm not saying I'm going to fall off the bandwagon, but I kind of got, just living a high quality life is just what's so awesome, really.
Yes, I know what you're saying. I mean, it's because what you're feeling is actually normal for a human. Those other things are not normal. Having athlete's foot, for instance, I had many great big benefits, but one that surprised me, a bit like your toenail fungus thing, was the athlete's foot. I'd had that for 30, 40 years and tried everything, went carnivore, and it just went. And and there were a few people that have said to me in the past 4 years of me being carnivore, is it a placebo? And I said, no, because many things cleared up. I didn't even expect, I wasn't even thinking about. That's not what I did it for. So, my viewers tend to like the practicalities. So we'll get the boring bit out of the way. So do you eat 1 meal a day, 2 meals a day? What's your day of carnivore look like?
I tend to work out fasted in the morning, and then work most of the day just drinking water. I tend to get hungry about maybe 3 or 4 p.m. And then I normally have some boiled eggs or maybe some scrambled eggs, but nothing too filling. I'm not really that hungry at that point, but I do feel peckish. And then I will have an evening meal, which is normally a ruminant meat of some kind, just done on the barbecue, and it's really simple. We have no prep work to do, no vegetables to peel, nothing to steam, nothing to kind of coordinate, and that works really well. We've got I've got 2 kids as well who are kind of 14 and 11. My husband is also carnivore as well and seen many benefits himself. He had lots of knee arthritic problems that have gone away, and my kids also eat the same way now. It was a bit of a struggle to keep them eating vegetables when we weren't, so they very quickly decided to join us. And my daughter has seen huge benefits as well in her athletic performance. She's a netball player, and so is my son. So everyone's pretty much we're just we don't think about food. We love our food, but we eat it, we put it away, we do other things, and it's not something that consumes more time than it needs to for us to be, as efficient as we can be with getting the right level of nutrients in.
Yes, the food freedom is one of those underestimated benefits, because up to age 50, I was high carb and everything was going south. You don't know very much about me. I'm also an advanced personal trainer and train people in the Olympics. So we could talk about stretching until the cows come home. But anyway, okay. I don't stretch. But anyway,
good. I found someone who doesn't.
So what about fasting? I guess you don't fast from what you just said. I mean, do you feel there's a place for fasting in this sort of community?
Do you mean extended fasting?
Yeah. Not intermittent, but more sort of extended.
Yeah, I think there is. I think that my weight has. I don't know if I even mentioned weight loss, but weight loss was another improvement on carnivore over keto. But my weight has kind of gone down to pretty much where I want it to be. Maybe I could lose a couple more kilos, something like that. I think if I wanted to get rid of those, I would fast for a few days, and that's how I would do it. I noticed that, when I do high fat, I'm not gaining any weight doing that. And I do like to listen in on the kind of high fat versus high protein discussions within the kind of carnivore space. And I haven't actually tried, I would say I haven't properly tried high protein, but I'd like to know if there is a difference and whether one is better than the other, or maybe it's a question of cycling between both to give your body a bit of a kind of variation. But no, I haven't had, I guess, any reason to fast, but I think over time I probably would like to do a few. And I think that's, for me, the way that you would, if you wanted to lose more weight than where you currently are, because I think your body just optimizes to where it's happy, and I think it's happy right now. So the only reason to lose more weight would be, I aesthetically would like to. And so I'm pretty happy either way. And if I wanted to, then fasting is a great tool for that.
Yes, I think we're very like-minded in our opinion of fasting as well. I don't fast very much, and people ask me why that is, and I say because I don't feel a need for it, but I certainly see a need for it in some people. So
I've definitely found that. So I was just going to say, I've been traveling a bit recently, and I have found that fasting during traveling is fantastic, because you get to go like on a long haul flight somewhere. You don't need to worry about bringing food. You don't need, and whether the food's allowed in that country. You don't need to worry about what they're serving on board. But for me, I've done 3 or 4 day fasts just from traveling, and for me that's like the perfect time to fast and the perfect solution for all the perils of traveling as a carnivore.
Yeah, I think that's an underestimated benefit. I did some fasting last year for an experiment, which was on YouTube. I did a 72-hour fast. But I think you're right. When you're traveling, if you want to avoid seed oils, you need to avoid virtually every restaurant there is in town. So if you're able to fast, or you've trained yourself to be able to fast, think about food differently, that's a big benefit. One of the reasons I wanted you on, I'm going to talk about a big thing now, which is you're actually pretty active in trying to spread the word, and you've got quite a big conference coming up. So I wondered if you'd just be kind enough to give us a little bit of background as to what you're doing and what you're promoting.
Absolutely, yeah. So for those who don't know, the Public Health Collaboration is a UK charity, and we exist really to help people understand the best information we can give them on metabolic health and how they can prevent themselves getting one of the many diseases we talked about, which originate and are triggered by poor metabolic health. So we are a charity that focuses on helping both the medical healthcare community understand that, as well as the public. And our biggest event of the year is an annual conference that we hold, and this year it's going to be located in Sheffield at the Crucible, which people in the UK will probably be familiar with as a snooker venue, but which has a large capacity and which allows us to really invite the public to come along and really get involved. So many of us that have been on this journey have been finding that a lot of the experts out there are not the normal experts that we would go to improve our health. And what we're trying to do is to help people understand that just changing from away from processed food towards real food can have a massive impact on your propensity to your risk of getting any of these metabolic illnesses. And you can really control your metabolic health through doing that. So we're bringing together some of the best experts that we can find and that we know of. And so we have the likes of Dr. Ben Bickman coming along, who talks a lot about the basis of all of this metabolic health conversation. And he was one of the leading experts in insulin resistance. So he's great to hear from. We have Georgia Eade covering mental health benefits of eating real food and eating this way. We have, let's see, who else? There's Sophia Clemens coming to talk about cancer. And we have Sean Baker talking about the elimination diet, who will be someone people in this community will be familiar with probably. Yeah. And then we have our own experts as well. The Unwins, Dr. David Unwin, who has helped many people put their diabetes into remission. Many people are aware of his work. And Professor Roy Taylor from Newcastle University, who is one of the leading researchers in type 2 diabetes. Jen Unwin, Dr. Jen Unwin, who is working and leading a project to try and get food addiction more recognised as part of the reason that we sometimes struggle to move away from processed food. And so loads of experts and a few more to be announced as well, who will be there and who will be explaining for all the metabolic illnesses how we can avoid them, and also the benefits that we would see as a nation if we were to, in terms of the societal benefits, the impact on the NHS. We spend about 10 billion a year on diabetes, about 7 billion on cardiovascular disease, 5 billion on cancer. I mean, these are huge numbers and a huge burden for us as taxpayers to be covering. And about 80% is what we estimate of the illnesses that the NHS treat are preventable. So just imagine what things would look like, both financially for us and in terms of our tax payouts, as well as our, the kind of benefits for our society and our family and our people who we love, not having to encounter any of that. So we really believe that if people understood that and could start to take a little bit more control over their own health and not see these diseases as something that is inevitable and carry on being eating what the food companies tempt us with, a significant change can be made. So that's the reason we have this conference, is to help people understand that message. And so the conference is on the 19th and 20th of May in Sheffield, as I mentioned, and you can easily buy tickets at any point on phcuk.org. And it would be great also if people could follow us and support us. We're on all the social media platforms: Twitter, Facebook, Instagram, LinkedIn, under phcuk.org. Or check out our website, and we have lots of information there, lots of guides. The Dr. Unwin's sugar infographics, which help people understand how many teaspoons are in very standard foods, is a great tool that people use. A lot of people use it with kids as well to help them move away from processed foods. So lots of resources on there as well for people to check out. And our YouTube channel has lots of great talks on it as well, if you can't come along to the conference, to find out more about what these experts have to say about metabolic health. So we really do appreciate the support people give us, because we are a charity and we rely on the public helping us and supporting us if they would like to see bigger change come from what they've discovered. So our members are very much made up of people who understand metabolic health. So if you're one of those, then please do support us, whether in the UK or not. Please get involved, follow us, share our content.
That's brilliant. And just so you know, the links will be in the description when I do the edit. And also some of the things you mentioned there, I'll be putting into some of the visuals. For instance, the sugar graphic is particularly powerful. And I have actually tried to get Dr. Unwin on, as diabetes is a big subject of mine, but I think he's a bit busy at the moment. And some great names there. Sean Baker, obviously, who I think of maybe as the father of the carnivore diet. Dr. Sean Baker was hugely popular in the community. So, yeah, great guests. And Ben Bickman is, there's a thing with, about 2 years ago, I started to talk about the HbA1c. And from my from my phlebotomy side, why so many diabetics were having brilliant numbers daily, but why the HbA1c was going up. And I came up with a theory why this is. I won't go into it now, but I have a video on my channel about why we need to look at HbA1c differently when you're carnivore. And about 2 months ago, I saw Ben Bickman with the same theory. So I was thinking, wow, I'm a little bit validated here, but I won't get into the nitty gritty of that because it's not about that. But I mean, great guests, absolutely, definitely worth turning up to that conference, I think. And like I say, the description will have all the links. You just be able to click and you can book straight away. I'm
just going to say one more thing about the conference, Stephen, which is
that, please do. That's great. I want to know more about it.
What we're hoping to, what we're planning to have is, especially for those interested in seeing Sean Baker, Dr. Baker, is a panel discussion between him and someone who is more plant-based, and to really bring together those two types of ways of eating and the relative merits and demerits of eating plants, which I think will be a really interesting discussion. It's not something you get much content on, because we do find that people tend to find a camp and stick to it. So it's harder for people who are trying to come away from eating processed food to really figure out which direction to go in, and how to reconcile all these differing ideas that say they're backed by the right science. So we think that would be a really interesting discussion for people to come along and hear. And I think the good thing about coming to the conference as opposed to watching it online is that you get to ask questions, you get to meet people, and it's a real buzz, and I've just been to Low Carb Denver a few weeks ago, and you just come away on a bit of a high. And I was in Low Carb Gold Coast in Australia as well in October. So I would really love for people to come along and experience that and see all of this great content being delivered firsthand and get to know other people who run similar journeys.
Yes, thank you. I think it will be a huge success personally, and with that lineup, I'd be very surprised if it isn't. And with your social media links as well, and the tools you mentioned, I mean, it's really good. So it's the public health collaboration, and I'm really proud that it's in the UK actually, because one of the things about my channel is I'm trying to get the bigger influencers to come and talk and try and spread the word in the UK a little bit more, but it's very difficult with the time differences, and they don't know me from Adam. But I've had some nice responses. So anyway, I'll keep plugging away, trying to get the bigger names to come onto the channel. It's interesting though that you feel so motivated to get so involved and really push it. I feel the same. I think I'm doing my bit with this sort of stuff. When you first went carnivore, was you in the public health collaboration on the keto side? So this is new to you as well for this year?
Yeah, so when I had that kind of moment of I want to do something else with my skills, funnily enough, I had just recently found out about the public health collaboration and thought, well, actually I should have known about them sooner, because I had already come to the realization that we were eating the wrong diet, and I'd heard about that from many other experts, probably people like Dr. Eric Berg and Dr. Ken Berry, and when I came across public health collaboration, I thought, oh, that should have been the first thing that came up on my YouTube algorithm results, because they're in the UK. So how can I help them grow and spread the message more? And that's really why I thought I could help them, and they happen to be advertising for people to come and help do just that. So that's kind of why I got involved. I was more in just about moving from keto to carnivore at the time, I think. But, obviously the message of public health is really about real food and people understanding the benefits of that. So I'm very much trying to help with spreading that message through them.
Yeah, and the frustrating thing is it's so simple, and we see it demonstrated time and time again. And the pushback from the big food companies and the big pharmaceuticals is just saturated with so much money. They're so pervasive, it's very difficult to fight. But as more and more people do this, the best thing is your own personal experience and seeing differences in your own health and getting the stories out there, just making sure that everyone knows what's going on. I really take my hat off to you and everyone that's doing the conference. I'm really looking forward to seeing the results of their appearances, because I love everybody you've got there. They're really good. And you mentioned people like Ken Berry. I think he's trying to get there for next year, isn't he, or something?
That's right, yeah.
So yeah, that'd be quite a feather in your cap as well. Um, you mentioned your family there are eating this way. Was that difficult for you to convince them to try it, or how did that happen?
It's an interesting journey actually they've been on. But so my husband was always up for, he's working a lot, he's busy. He was an ex-professional rugby player, so he has these kind of chronic knee issues, but still very athletic. And so as soon as I started to kind of investigate diet and nutrition, he was happy to just go with it and follow and to get all the benefits. So he's just kind of gone along for the ride, but very, very much in agreement on all of the topics, and listens to Jason Fung a lot. Just listens to Brett Sher and Diet Doctor himself. So he's fully there. My daughter, I know how, I guess from experience, how teens work. So I was very much hands off with her and said, this is the information that I've found out. So we're going to be eating like this. And we were already feeding them real food, so that was never negotiable. And she very much went away and thought about it and said to me that she does not want to eat vegetables anymore and she wants to try it. So that was a tricky decision for us. I mean, I was of the opinion that was the right way for her to eat, but there's various different, I guess, societal norms that I knew she would be encountering by deciding to do that. And she decided to try it. She's seen, as I said, huge benefits in her skin and her hair and her weight, her athletic performance. And I think the hardest thing for her is eating that way in front of her friends. So at school, she takes in a packed lunch, which we make her every day, just normally kind of scrambled eggs and bacon in a thermos flask. And she's often, encountered kind of comments from her friends saying, oh, that doesn't smell nice and this kind of thing. So, there's obviously food at school, but we and unfortunately we have to pay for it. But she doesn't want to eat it. And it's normally very standard kind of lasagna, that type of food. So she's really happy with the diet. And I was surprised that she has not relented to the kind of peer pressure of, as well as the kind of the actual food she's eating, but the amount of sweets and chocolates and pastries and croissants and, someone's birthday and someone did well, who's done well on a test and whatever it might be, they are just literally under her nose every single minute of the day, it feels like, at school. And so she's had to figure out that she just has to say no to them. And sometimes she's fallen off the wagon and she's texted me from school going, Mummy, I've eaten a cookie. And I said, look, it's fine, just carry on and, just try not to let that trigger anymore. And so she knows how to manage it. She knows her weaknesses, and she's very resolute that she's not going to keep falling off the wagon. Well, she's only done it a couple of times, but she knows how to manage that situation now, even though I think it's way more difficult for kids with the peer pressure and with the access to the wrong foods. But she's really enjoying it. She's got a best friend who luckily is doing the same thing as her, so that makes it a little bit easier. And my son is kind of, he's just eats what, as long as he gets meat, he's happy. He eats a fair bit of fruit, so that's fine. And he takes a lot of homemade jerky into school every day, and he loves that, and so do all his friends. So normally the problem with him is whether or not he gets to eat enough jerky, because his friends all want to eat it and he has to share it out between them. So they've been on their own little individual journeys, and I actually interviewed my daughter a couple of weeks ago, and it's really interesting to hear it from a teenager's perspective, because you have to overcome and be, I think, fairly mature about why you're doing it. And whilst her reasons are a little bit more maybe aesthetic and frivolous, because that's really what you care about when you're that age, you're not thinking about diabetes so much, they're still important to her, and they still drive her to want to change and to be better. And I think I'm really proud of her for that. The other thing in schools is that you're getting taught quite different information, and she had to make decisions about in her food tech class whether or not I think the challenge was design a nutritionally balanced meal based on the Eat Well guide, which in itself is a contradiction in terms. So she had to figure out, well, do I just play the game and get the marks, or do I say what I think? And she was very clear she was going to say what she thought. and wrote a whole few pages on how there is no such thing as a balanced meal with the Eat Well guide, because you're balancing good and bad, and that's not, doesn't make any sense. So this is the meal that I would design, and that I think is the best meal for humans based on what they've been eating for millions of years. And that's what I would eat, and that's what I would design for someone else to eat. So I was very proud of her for doing things like that. And it's not necessarily going to be getting her as far forward in some subjects, but she thinks she sees the bigger picture, I guess, in some of these things.
Fantastic. That's fantastic. And peer pressure is particularly difficult when you're that age. I still feel as an adult of, you know, approaching 59, that I still get the sideways looks in restaurants and out and about, and even in the family, to be honest. They're still not quite sure, even though I probably think I am the epitome of health and vitality. Don't smoke, don't drink, and you know, I'm still working out and very active and no medications. So even when you're a good example, it's still really tough. So at that age, it's incredible to stick with it. And I like that answer as well. Recently, I had added the honours section to my science degree, and I had to play the game exactly because I was doing health sciences and physiology. And you do have to play the game, sadly, which didn't like very much, but there you go. So just to wrap up, because it's been fascinating, and I love this interview because it's been all about the minutiae of you as a person, as your family, and then the massive project you've got to get it out there to the public. But we'll go back to just the one person that's watching this, not quite sure whether they should do carnivore or not. What advice would you give them?
I would say, well, I guess it depends where they're coming from, but I would say there isn't a reason, there is no cost in trying it. There is no kind of con or issue or anything that you're going to encounter that you won't be able to come back from. So I'd say the right period to try it is about 3 months, because that's when I noticed most of the benefits that kind of come about. So if you want to make an informed decision about living an optimal life and knowing and experiencing what that feels like, then it feels to me like a no-brainer to try it. And maybe that's not for you, and you still miss vegetables and you don't feel any difference, or without the plants, but I don't think there's any cost in trying. So I would really encourage people to do that. And if they're not in the kind of space of this kind of way of eating at all yet, then I think the message for people out there who are eating maybe a standard diet is to look at the history of nutrition, look at how we've eaten as a species, do your own research, understand how we've evolved, understand what these dietary guidelines have been saying for the last since the kind of 80s, and what was really behind that, because it isn't about nutrition, it is about interests being supported, and that's not really in our interest. So study that history and make your own mind up about the right way to eat, and try and get away from manufactured foods.
If you want to see more of this type of thing or that type of thing, then just check out this video. This one. Just click it. You can subscribe if you want, but this video is really good.